Welcome new and old friends. My name is 242, and today 42 got us one story. So, turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. After my grandmother passed, we found 30 years worth of letters from Grandpa to her in the attic. Each one told in graphic detail the women he murdered while traveling for work, and included a small memento he kept from each victim. Crossroads by Sean E. Britten. You're telling me I'm fucking bankrupt? That morning started out as a good one for Malton Masters. Most mornings were good ones in his experience. He'd woken up refreshed with no hangover in spite of his late-night reveries the night before. He never got hangovers, never even really got sick. Kylie, his beautiful wife, was in a weird mood and had acted a little cold, but that was okay. Malton could just as soon arrange a nooner with his assistant Rachel, or any of his other casual girlfriends. Kylie knew they had an understanding. He'd gone for a quick 5-mile run around his massive property just for the sheer pleasure of it. He had one of those metabolisms where no matter what he ate or what he drank or what drugs he put into his body, he stayed lean and fit. But he liked to run. He looked as good as he had 10 years ago when he was in his late 20s, if not better. He'd taken the Porsche to work, although the agency tended to keep itself running no matter how much or little effort he put into it. But then Rachel reminded Milton of a meeting he had in the boardroom, which he had forgotten. Apparently a few weeks ago, some of the agency's accountants knew some irregularities. Milton hadn't worried. Things like that always worked themselves out. They hired a forensic accountant to go through the company's books and holdings. That morning, he was delivering his report. It's a quite bit worse than bankruptcy, Mr. Masters, the bespectacled man in the gray suit said. There are debts here, both in the agency's name and in your name personally, that are astronomical. I have no idea how this has been missed or has stayed afloat for so long. Do you know who we represent? Milton said. Some of the hottest names in the country, on the planet. They bring millions, tens of millions back into this agency every day. And then it all feeds back into the network of costs and holdings. It's a labyrinth. I've been doing this for more than a decade and I've never seen anything like it. And basically, everywhere you look, these debts eat away at everything. They're like termites that have been chewing at the foundation of a house for years and years. And now that house is at the point of collapse. This isn't possible. I can't understate how serious this is, Mr. Masters. Your personal holdings are tied throughout all of this. You're not just going to lose your business, you're going to lose your house, your cars. I'm sorry, you're going to lose everything. You could even be facing jail time. That's not possible. Embezzlement is a real possibility. But some of these structures go back to the very foundation of your business. Do you remember who set up all of these original applications and accounts for you? Milton stopped and stared. It took the accountant several prompting to bring him out of what seemed like a fugue. Milton always told people he didn't like to look back when they asked him about the start of his success. He preferred living in the present, but trying to cast his mind back to those early days, 10 years early, it all seemed shrouded in gray. It always felt like it just happened so easily. Like one day the office, the staff, and all the boring business stuff like accounting and legal documents were just there, and then the clients started flocking to them. No matter how Milton twisted it in his memory, he couldn't think of who might have set those things up, or how. This is still an informal meeting because I realized just how dire the situation was, the accountant said. I'll put together a much more thorough formal report to identify your biggest risks, but right now you need to stop spending. Today, this second. Don't touch any of these accounts until we talk again. This couldn't be real. This was a nightmare, Milton thought. He drifted back to his office in a daze. Windows, even the reception area outside his office, offered dazzling views. His busty, red-headed assistant Rachel shot up as he entered. Milton, are you okay? You look pale, Rachel said. Just hold my calls and don't let anyone see me, Milton said. Milton's office was huge, but the walls were cluttered by a sheer number of platinum records, signed musical instruments, and photos of Milton with clients, other musicians, and various celebrities. Milton fell into a chair behind his desk. He knew he should call someone, but he didn't know who. He didn't handle that kind of thing anymore. Truth be told, he couldn't remember when the last time was he ever had to handle that kind of thing for himself. This can't be happening. Milton buried his face in his hands for a few moments, but then looked up and happened to glance towards his desktop computer screen. It was on sleep mode and black, and reflected Milton's morose features back at him. But behind his shoulder, he also spotted the reflection of a monstrous dog. Its teeth were bared and its eyes blazed, looking like it was about to go for his neck. What the? Milton shot out of his seat, spinning and knocking it to the ground. There was nothing behind him. Of course there wasn't. For the dog to be where he had seen it in the reflection, it would have been hovering outside his window some 20 stories off the ground. Still, panting, Milton twisted and haunted around the office for some sign of the phantom dog. Nothing. It must have been stress or something. He'd imagined it, no matter how real it seemed. Milton collected himself and marched back out of the office. Rachel, confused, jumped up from behind her desk again. Milton, what happened? Where are you going? Home. Cancel my meetings. Do I have any meetings? Cancel them, Milton said. Milton returned to his Porsche and tore out of the parking garage. On his way home, Milton realized he was putting an awful lot of faith in the word of just one man. Not even one of his own accountants. Someone hired from outside of the agency. But somehow, he knew the man had been telling the truth. He had a feeling deep in the pit of his stomach that it was all coming down. A feeling he'd been holding on to for a long time that somehow, someday, it would all end. He hadn't forgotten the dog he hallucinated either. He kept glancing to his rear-view mirror, pointed at the back seat as he drove. When Milton arrived home, he was greeted by the sight of 2 huge trucks parked outside his mansion. Men in dark gray uniforms pouring in and out of his front doors. With them carried furniture, rugs, paintings, and other artworks. Milton screamed up the driveway and pulled hard to stop behind the trucks. "What the fuck is this? What do you think you're doing?" Milton yelled as he emerged from the Porsche. "Repossession," a senior man called over and slapped some papers into Milton's chest. "It's all in here. The bank is taking it back." "You can't just let yourself in and start stealing all my stuff." "Your wife let us in," the supervisor said. "Yeah, she's been very accommodating," another nearby man said, carrying one end of an antique sofa. The man on the other side of the sofa snickered. So did the supervisor and several other surrounding removalists. Milton ignored them and ignored the papers, tossing them aside as he ran into the house. "Kylie! Kylie!" Milton yelled. Milton sprinted up the stairs and headed for the bedroom where he had last seen Kylie that morning. He was surprised at the top of the stairs to find himself out of breath. He could remember the last time he had been out of breath, even after a big run. But the stairs he traveled, usually several times a day without issue, had winded him. Milton took a moment to recover and continued down the hallway. "Kylie?" Milton threw the bedroom door open and recoiled at what he saw. Kaylee bent over the bed on her hands and knees, totally naked. Two removalists stood around her, one at either end, with their pants pulled around their ankles. As Milton entered, they all broke apart, but what he seen in that split second burned itself across his brain. Kylie dropped across the bed, but she didn't look ashamed. She looked furious. "Kylie, what are you doing?" Milton gasped. Milton's heart dropped into his stomach. The betrayal. They might have an arrangement where Milton could sleep with whoever he wanted, but for the last 10 years, Kylie had been faithful, at least as far as he knew. The two men shoveled themselves back into their pants. Staring sullenly, they filed past Milton. Kylie wrapped herself in one of the sheets and rolled off the bed. "What the fuck were you doing?" Milton repeated himself. "I think you should know. Pretty sure you've been there once or twice," Kaylee said. It was true Milton had shared a woman with other men like that a few times, when the mood struck him. But not Kaylee. Never Kaylee. She was untouchable. The two of them had gone to high school together, but they had never hung out in the same circles. It was only when they reconnected around the same time Milton was putting his agency together that they started dating. They married after a whirlwind romance. Their 10-year anniversary was coming up soon, and as far as Milton was concerned, theirs was a perfect and perfectly happy marriage. "Is this to get back at me? You found out I'm broke and getting repossessed and you wanted to hurt me?" "I didn't want to hurt you, Milton," Kaylee said. "In fact, I don't care about you at all. I woke up this morning and I couldn't figure out what I'd been thinking about the last 10 years. I don't understand why we got together or where my feelings for you ever came from. But I love you." "You love what about me? Seriously, what? What did we ever talk about when we first got together? When did we ever fall in love? Back in high school, we never talked." Milton gasped, much like when he had been asked about the origins of his business dealings that morning. Everything in his memory seemed faded. Him and Kylie getting together just seemed to happen back then. But it was insane. They were in love. Kylie hung off his every word. She laughed at his every joke. She let him do whatever he wanted as long as it made him happy. They had been distant in high school, but people change and they reconnected. Kaylee slapped Milton in the stomach and snapped him out of his thoughts. Still only wrapped in a sheet, she strolled casually out of the room. "You're getting fat, by the way," Kylie remarked on her way out. "It can't all be fake. It can't," Milton said as she left. But in his gut, he knew it was. Milton felt out of breath and his heart was pounding. He crossed the room to their walk-in wardrobe. Kylie was right about his weight, and that suddenly felt important. Milton stripped off his shirt and stood in front of one of the wardrobe's full-length mirrors. Somehow, Milton had developed a punch that hung over his waistband. His chest and arms had softened as well. He still wasn't in necessarily bad shape for a man of 38, but Milton remembered admiring his lean physique in the mirror just that morning. The hard lines of muscles that he never really seemed to work on. Could stress cause the body to break down so quickly? He felt heavy and old, like years of alcohol and drug use was suddenly catching up to him. Then, suddenly behind him, Milton saw the dog. Clear as life. It looked similar to a Rottweiler with a huge, muscular frame, a giant of a canine, and totally black. Its lips were drawn back from fangs that could easily rip him apart. Its eyes were blazing red, as if lit by some infernal fire. Milton heard it let out a chainsaw snarl that rippled up his spine. "Jesus!" Milton whirled around and crashed into another mirrored closet door. Nothing. There was nothing behind him, but it had looked so real. Milton could picture individual strands of fur rippling down its back, see the shine of drool on its teeth. He heard it growl, but the carpet patch behind him was empty. He checked the mirrors and found them empty as well. What the fuck is happening to me? Milton's heart thundered. His whole body felt like it was covered in a cold sweat. He pulled his shirt back on, feeling vulnerable, and raced out of the bedroom. Looking for Kylie, he couldn't find her. All the removalists seemed to be concentrated at the front of the house. Milton snuck down the back instead, feeling like a thief in his own home. Behind the house was Milton's enormous pool, clean water glittering in the sunlight. It had an irregular shape, like a natural lagoon surrounded by a garden and a shady cabana. At the other end of the pool was the pool house. 2 stories with several bedrooms, bathrooms, and its own bar. The pool house was bigger than plenty of people's actual homes. When they weren't entertaining and the mansion started feeling a little too big and empty, the pool house was Milton's private oasis. Milton let himself in. At least the repossessors hadn't gotten to the pool house yet. The front room, with the big glass doors and the windows facing the pool, was full of more music memorabilia. A jukebox and a dozen guitars occupied one wall. Tens of thousands of dollars worth of instruments. Milton hadn't picked one up in a while, but he used to play all the time. When just how much his life had changed started to overwhelm him and he got struck by fear, it would all somehow be taken away. He'd play guitar for a while and lose himself. There was no time like the present to start again. Milton slipped one of his favorites off the wall, plugged it into an amp by the jukebox, and sat down to start playing. Milton's hands froze over the neck of the guitar. He strummed, but he had no rhythm. His fingers just falling against the strings. He tried to twist his left hand into the right shape, but he couldn't remember any chords. His mind was blank. He couldn't even find a comfortable position to hold the instrument, like he'd never picked up a guitar before in his life. No, it's not possible, Milton said. Milton couldn't remember a thing he'd ever learned about playing guitar. Sure, it had been a while, but not that long. He frequently pulled one of the instruments down from the wall and played a little bit at parties. His guests often told him he was good enough to pick up a music career of his own, had he ever wanted to deal with recording and touring. Some of it was no doubt flattery, but Milton was generally good. He knew he was good. But suddenly, he could no longer access the memories or ability to play. The strings hurt his fingers as if he had never built up any calluses. All that came out of the amp was noise. Milton heard another chainsaw growl rising to a snarl. Looking up, he saw the dog again, its reflection ghostly, but very much present in one of the pool house's glass doors. Its fangs were exposed and its eyes on fire. It opened its mouth and barked, the sound so deep and loud Milton felt it in his chest. You did this to me, go away! Milton ripped the cord out of the guitar, stood up and pitched it towards the dog's reflection. The glass panel shattered. The guitar flew right through it, cracking against the pavers that surrounded the pool. Knife-like shards continued to tremble out of the frame and break against it. Mr. Masters, I don't think you're in any position to be treating your assets like that, a voice said. The bespectacled accountant from the morning strolled into view and stopped in the middle of the shattered frame, right where the dog's reflection had been. In his gray suit and red tie, he was such a small and unassuming figure that even after he started Milton's downfall, it still took Milton a few moments to recognize him. Shoes crackling on broken glass, he stepped through the frame. "What the fuck are you doing here?" Milton asked. "We had a deal, Mr. Masters," the accountant said. "I'm here to see you fulfill it." "What deal? I didn't sign anything." "Oh, but you did. And in blood, no less." The accountant took off his glasses and cleaned them with his tie. He went to put them back on, but then seemed to think better of it and tossed them aside instead. With every step, the planes of the accountant's face subtly changed along with the way he held himself. A devilish grin split the man's face. "I know you don't like to think about the past, too busy living in the present, right? But think back," the accountant said. "You were a nobody in high school. Pathetic. And then after you graduated, things didn't get any better." "People changed. I built this all from the ground up," Milton said. Milton's head jerked as he heard the dog snarl and his jaw snapped. He couldn't see it, couldn't see its reflection, but it was somewhere in the room with the two of them. Invisible, but he could feel it. "You bounced from one minimum wage job to the next. No aim, no girlfriends. You didn't even have the drive to actually learn how to play the guitar like you always wanted." "God, no!" Milton backed out towards the pool house bar. He started to remember those shiftless, aimless years, waiting for a break that never came, something that would magically put him on the path to greatness. "As you approached 30, you became more and more desperate," the accountant said. "You heard the story of Robert Johnson, the blues musician who sold his soul for his unearthly skill. Not true, by the way. He was never one of ours." No! Milton started to remember. All that gray in his memories began to lift, and he remembered the night the man in gray described. He heard the dog in the room with them again, something heavy and hairy brushing against Milton's leg, but he couldn't see it. "You went to the Crossroads at midnight. You drew the signs. You said the words." "I didn't know it was real." and you signed away your soul when I appeared to you. You've been thinking about the contract for so long. Everything you wanted, no loopholes, but such small, petty dreams. To be rich, to hang out with the cool kids, to fuck the prom queen. You wanted abs without having to work for them, and to play the guitar without practicing. Petty, petty. But it was yours for 10 years, as per our agreement. I didn't know! It had all come back to Milton now. Oh, and one thing, very interesting. You want to forget, so you could really enjoy all your pleasures. You want to forget how you got them, so you wouldn't spend the next 10 years worrying about what was to come. We could spare you that. What's 10 years against an eternity? There must be some kind of deal we can make now. A new deal. If you give me time. If you give me more time. I'm afraid your time is up, Mr. Masters. You called the tune. You danced the music. And now, as they say, it's time to pay the piper. Milton heard the dog bark and something seized him by the leg. He looked down and saw invisible fangs shredding through his lower parts of his pant leg and drawing blood. Milton screamed and threw himself backwards, teeth like knives ripping through his muscles and meat. Lashing out with his other foot, Milton met something solid even though he couldn't see what he'd hit. Blood flew and the visible hound savaging his calf for a few more moments and then letting go. Jesus God! Milton grabbed the bar and hurled himself up trying to get away, leg gushing blood. Please, okay, please, I'll come with you, but call it off. Please, call the dog off. Oh, Mr. Masters, if I were you, I'd savor this moment. Compared to where you're going, this is no more than a gentle hazing. Invisible, the hellhound came around the bar and hit Milton from behind. Teeth ripped open his arm and yanked him down from on top of the bar. Milton fell, screaming. He felt its hot breath on his face, smelled his own blood as the creature fell on top of him and began to bite. After pounding on the lid of the coffin for hours, I realized it was useless. If only I had known sooner that ghosts couldn't move through solid objects either. And with that, we're near the end of this video. I'd like to thank Shane Britten for letting me read his story. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, well, he's got a website, and I've got the link down below for you to check out. Now, if you enjoyed that story, I'd also like you to hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. If you'd like to help this YouTube channel / podcast, share it with anyone who might enjoy it. You'd be surprised how much that helps. I also have a Patreon where, for no more than $1 a month, you get early access to the audio. And if you pay more, you get a few other bonuses. I also do have merch, and I have a PayPal. And I'd also like to mention that I have a 24/7 stream now, which has all the stories from this year so far. And all new stories will get posted into there a few days down the road. And as the month ends, I'll throw in the 2-sentence horrors for the whole month. But of course, I would love a comment, but I gotta get you that Sunday word first. On screen right now is everyone who left me a comment last week. Thank you guys so much. And this Sunday's word is revoke, which means put an end to the validating or operation of a decree or decision or promise. So, in the comments down below or on Twitter adding me, write a sentence using this word. I promise I won't revoke it. Now, with that out of the way, I'd like to say thank you. As of the recording, I'm at 710 subscribers. And we're getting really close to 750, which is crazy. So, thank you guys so much. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.